Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Accelerating Data Modernization in State and Local Governments. Today, our discussion centering on how those state and local governments, like the ones that you're working in, can reduce data management challenges, also enhance security, as well as accelerate data modernization, and how to do it with secure tools that are really designed for the hybrid cloud era, talking HPE Eletra, paired with HPE ProLiant Gen 11 servers, which are powered by those fifth generation Intel Xeon scalable processors. I am your host, James Hilliard. Glad to be on board for this conversation in just a few minutes. Glad to have the cloud practice lead from Sterling on board, Nathan Bennett. We're going to kick off the conversation, learn a little bit about what Sterling does and how they work in that local and government space. And then we're going to be really happy to share with you a recent conversation that I was able to have. Sat down with two experts. One was Graham Fairbank. He is the HPE North American Field CTO for storage. And we also had special guest Greg Lindsay on board. He is currently Chief Communications Officer at Climate Alpha. If the name Greg Lindsay is familiar and you watch Jeopardy, you know he's a two-time Jeopardy champion, also the only human being to go undefeated against IBM's Watson. Had a chance, sat down with both those guys, talked about some of the emerging tech trends out there that are impacting local communities. So really cool insights that they both shared. Happy to bring that to all of you in just a moment. But first off, Nathan, you get to kick things off and really did want to go kind of high level with Sterling, with your engagements at the state and local level. How do you kind of really work with and interact in that space?
Yeah, so Sterling is a women-owned small business within the Midwest. So we are headquartered in South Dakota. We have offices in Texas. We have an office in Florida. And, we have CIDs, which is our configure integration and distribution centers in California and DC. So we're nationwide, right? So when we get into the area of state and local government, we really try to work around those smaller groups that really are trying to do more with less. I think every engagement that we get into, someone has said, well, we did more with less last year, so they want to do even more with even less this year. And it seems to be a continuing strategy that just continues to evolve. And Sterling, being a small business itself, has a good understanding of what that really entails. We have an internal contract group that really works around the state and local contracting agencies to make sure that we are able to assist where those specific contracts lie. So, when you get into the government, it feels like a little bit of a different conversation because you see a lot of acronyms and different things like Texas DIR and NASPO and Omnia. These are not words we use in a day-to-day, conversation, but these are things that are very commonplace in state and local.
Let me ask you this. I want to dive into some of the more data-centric work that you all do. But before that, the idea of prioritizing what to do when, especially when you have these sometimes the do more with less, the lower budgets, tax revenue, we know changes from year to year in certain municipalities. So do you find that's a lot of what you do is sit down and really try and work and prioritize what's going to be the most effective now and what maybe can be pushed back a little bit, but not too far because we don't want to get that train off the tracks?
Yeah, that's a great way of having the conversation. Is when we get in front of customers, a lot of times they'll say, well, I think this is what the problem is that we need to address first. And it's great because that may be what is the most noise in the organization, but it may not be the main problem that needs to be addressed first. So we try to look into an organization as a whole and the entire problems that we're trying to fix for that customer before we actually start saying, okay, well, let's bring some solutions. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to get to an end state where the noise is reduced, however that noise is reduced, right? So in terms of prioritizing, a lot of these state and local folks will come to us and say, oh, we want to develop a new modernized application, or we want to modernize this, or we want to move to the cloud, being the cloud practice lead that comes up. But the reality is these are very difficult tasks to be taken on. And for us to be able to come in and try to remove the mist in the conversation and make it clear in terms of what's the first step, and then create that step-by-step process in order to get our customers to that end goal where the noise is reduced. That's our goal, and that's what we do at that level.
I can only imagine that most of the conversations that you do engage with obviously have to do with data because it's a tsunami of new data that has hit us over the last 10 years, 5 years, 18 months, this month alone. So, managing it, storing it, securing it, that's got to be top priority. What are a few of the things? We can't go into super detail. We'll get some contact information so the conversation can continue, but what are a few of the top things you try to do to help teams really get a handle on all that data?
Yeah. So first step is actually, it sounds silly to bring it up, but the first question and the first step is really, where is it? I think when we get into the different or conversations, really data is all over the place and it's stored all over the place. We have this understanding of 3-2-1, right? So you want like 3 copies of data in 2 different locations and 1 archive somewhere else offsite, right? So that's kind of the universal, okay, well, this is how we want to make sure that we have our data wherever it is. But when you get into all the individual pieces that kind of flow into that data, it gets a little bit more unique in terms of where the data is and what you do with that data. In 2024, we're going to hear this term quite often, that data is the oil within the IT community, because within data, there's so much analytics that you can bring from it. There's so much that you can do in order to bring documentation and help people in order to work better. And, not to be another, talking head to talk about AI and ML, but it's based off of data. If you do not have data pulling directly into your artificial intelligence and machine learning, that outcome is going to be dirty and it's going to be bad. So data is the lifeblood of everything that happens within the organization, how you store it, how you encrypt it, and how you make sure that where it needs to be transferred, it's done in a safe and secure way.
Folks, there's a lot more in terms of conversation to be had, but appreciate Nathan giving us a little insight into the background of Sterling and how the group is out there really working with those in the state and local governments to prioritize data and their projects and really work as partners to move forward on your modernization journey. Couple things you could do, and I'll put this up on the screen at the end of our conversation as well, but a phone number for you. I'll go slow, 877-242 4074, then sterling.com. And if you want to jot an email into the team, connect@sterling.com to reach out and continue the conversation. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to continue our conversation. Again, recently 2-time Jeopardy champion and the only guy to go undefeated against IBM's Watson. Greg Lindsay had a chance to sit down with him. We were also joined by the HP North America Field CTO for storage, and that is Graham Fairbank. And again, it was all a conversation about the future of urbanization through technology. And Graham really kicked things off, sharing his thoughts on some of the top security as well as storage challenges that he sees when he's engaging with local governments, et cetera. So take a look.
I work with customers in this vertical every day, and we found that really the biggest challenge that they are encountering today is the risk and uncertainty of cyber attack. What used to be a problem that was confined to large organizations with something to lose, with a large amount of money to respond to ransomware and other attacks, has really extended to every type of organization, be it commercial or government, because all of them have data. That data contains personal information that has value, and any disruption is worth something to a bad actor at this point. The impacts of these cyber attacks really extend past the actual impact of the availability loss, because there's regulatory pressures from the organization's constituencies, and there's always a need to deliver that data security solution with resiliency within a fixed budget and the skill sets of their workers. The problems that they're encountering, just they keep evolving, and as time goes on, the bad actors are engineering their methods faster than the industry is able to respond with better toolkits. Unfortunately, this has kind of led to a fragmented industry of solutions to protect. but that fragmentation is also delivered an opportunity to where you can pick and choose where you can pick and choose from the various solution sets and deliver best of breed to your organization. And I think that's really the opportunity here, is that we're in a time where delivering these solutions securely and reliably has never been more difficult. But there's also never been a better tool set to do it from. And, it looks like that will improve with time and lead to better things.
You said the B word, you said budget. And there is often we all see just in the local news some of the challenges that our local governments are having with tax revenue and people leaving certain states. And so there's a lot of uncertainty around budgeting for state and local. And that means investing in storage technologies, in other technologies, can sometimes be a challenge. Is that something that you see a lot of local governments getting a little more of a handle on, that they understand that they are collecting so much more data from us, the citizens out there? They have to protect that data because, while it's not the cash out there, the data is the true gold of today. And so has that at least elevated within the technologists that you work with in state and local, that they see the challenge there?
I don't feel that there's a consistent response across the organizations I work with. I feel that every organization is at a very different place on the way that they treat data. It's some of them understand that the more data they have, the more effective they can be as an organization, whereas some try as hard as possible to retain as little data and really shrink that footprint. Local government always has been, and the way I see it always will be born of very local requirements, and right back to that B word. Some of them are willing to invest to deliver more services, and some are not. And as vendors, we need to have solutions to respond to both sides in a way that can help deliver what they need.
For those state and local governments that are focusing on the data, know that they need to invest. Can you talk a little bit about some of the decision making and the importance of investing with really those tried and true organizations, the organizations that have been leading, like HPE and Intel, leading innovation in security, leading innovation in storage for so long? Why, if they are going to spend those precious dollars on the new technologies, they want to look for the leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. When organizations make an investment in a storage platform, they are making a conscious long-term relationship with that vendor. It is not like a compute solution that you could replace to meet a new business requirement easily. Data has gravity, data takes up space, and it is a substantive effort to relocate data for new requirements. So when it's time to make those purchasing decisions, you need to make sure you're choosing a vendor that not only has a complete suite of products that meet your requirements, but has a decent roadmap and vision for the future as to how they will deliver them in the future. In a demonstrated track record of innovation in the direction that suits your organization.
I want to talk a little bit of success here, Graham, of the organizations that have invested in HPE technologies to protect the data, secure that, just store it really, and then start making good decisions with all of that data. What are a few of the successes that you've seen out there from these municipalities where they've said, we're glad we invested here because this is now what we can do for our constituents?
Interestingly, I think one of the unique positions that municipalities are in is that municipalities tend to already own robust connectivity from site to site. Whether it is supporting communications between educational facilities and or water treatment and any of that. There's typically owned connectivity resources between sites. And that puts them in a situation where they are able to deliver more robust, high availability solutions than most, small and medium business. We kind of like to compare local government and small and medium business for their technology requirements. But the fact of the matter is, if you have low latency, high speed connectivity at your reach, you can deliver a much better product to your constituents. And I've seen it time and time again where really the local government has a greater ability to deliver that than most small companies.
All right. Hey, I appreciate it, Graham. Some good insights there. Got us off to a good chat here. And I do want to bring Greg Lindsay in. And Greg, we'll talk a little more Jeopardy and IBM Watson and all that in a little bit. But I want to, we spent a little time with Graham here, especially talking about that budget idea and some of the technologies. I want to get into a little more on the tech with you and even the future tech in a couple of minutes here. But what do you see in terms of a couple of the tech trends out there that are going to have the biggest impact, I guess, in the next maybe 5 to 10 years on how state and local really use technology to service us?
Well, you invoked Watson, so we got to start with AI as the trend. And it'll be interesting to see how much value cities and state governments are going to get out of AI in the short run. It's really interesting to see that they're already using it and drafting guidelines and hiring practices and working on actually sort of helping streamline the bureaucracy. I'm very excited, and some of my fellows at Cornell Tech have worked on projects about how we can sort of deliver services more efficiently to citizens. So for example, in New York City, if you have won the lottery to get affordable housing, it takes on average 6 months to move into the apartment or home that you've gotten. And so how do we draft a more streamlined version? How do you help people get into that house? And with AI chatbots and with some efforts to basically streamline that process, you can deliver services way more efficiently and help cities, of course, rationalize those legacy IT investments by basically being able to have AI as middleware that's able to pull out of those databases, analyze it, and send it back. So we're seeing a lot of stuff when it comes to helping more marginalized neighborhoods get better 311 service in New York. Or for example, one of the things we did at Cornell Tech was create a digital twin of every tree in New York City. So it helps decision makers think about where they want to invest in this. And I think that's where it goes in the longer run too. For cities, we see this emerging ability to build increasingly finer grained digital twins of everything. Digital twins of traffic, of city services, of infrastructure, and the ability to analyze it. And I think we're going to see a lot of ability here to really rationalize not just the compute infrastructure and storage, but really everything going on in cities.
Digital twinning of trees sticks in my ear, and is that one, cooling and shade and things like that, and two, is it they can now know where to go and trim to avoid power lines, to avoid clogging up the sewers during a storm.
Yeah, exactly. So number one, using AI and digital twins as a way to meet your climate goals by providing that essential cooling that will help with warmer summers. Definitely helping with your maintenance and bringing down operations. All of that effort there, of course, we've seen in efficiently guiding city workers to various locations. Now you're going to be able to use this to deliver customized instructions and better dispatching. Huge amounts of effort there in rationalizing that kind of response. And I just think also just this trend we're going to see towards simulation. We've talked for 15 plus years now about the ability to run a city in silicon, and we're now reaching that ability where you're able to generate all these outcomes and understand how people are using public space, how they're consuming public services, and even imagine the city together with them. There's some efforts to use generative AI to sit down with community groups and help them picture what you think that bike lane should look like. How can we build it together? So this also helps with democracy, reduces project time speeds by the fact that you can, get it out of community meetings. I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities there.
All right, Greg, obviously AI, one of the biggest trends out there, but that darling can't get all of the spotlight. What's another trend that you see that's going to have a big impact on us in terms of technology from state and local governments?
Well, look, if you want to look towards the future a bit, I mean, one thing we need to prepare for is what it's going to be like when that digital simulation comes out into the real world. So we saw Apple drop the Vision Pro. We've seen a lot of effort into embedding information in space in cities. And so what happens when we have a whole high resolution world that's combined with AI? What happens when you have a helpful chatbot on every corner, or you have systems that are helping guide traffic at the city level? They're steering people through this. You're going to have a ton. You're going to need a ton of storage for this, because you're going to have increasingly high resolution images overlaid on every part of the city. And this is going to be, again, powerful for cities for wayfinding, for policing. You're going to see this for a lot of advertising. You're going to see this for a lot of businesses in this. And this is something over the next 5 to 10 years where you're going to see, an infinite number of cities. And this is just starting to happen with the Apple Vision Pro. We saw people taking out the Times Square and, enhancing their view of that. So what happens when that escapes out into the world?
You said efficiency earlier. I don't always equate efficiency with some government processes. Some organizations do really, really, really well. I happen to be in California. Sometimes dealing with car issues can be a struggle. There isn't the greatest efficiency there. Are state and local governments on a technology front forming any type of coalitions, working groups, so that one part of the country is going to be great, but the other sucks? And why not all of us lift together? Are you seeing that work there?
Absolutely. There is a great organization doing this called the Open Mobility Foundation. So this is, I think, 80 cities worldwide that got together after the Uber years, where suddenly, because of an app on people's phones, you're seeing traffic congestion go up 10% in downtown San Francisco and in other cities across America and the world. And by pooling their efforts together, they partner with the private sector to basically start designing tech that allows you to manage curb space for deliveries, or understand where any given scooter is piled in a heap on your sidewalk and where you should remove it from. So not only can you use that to more, efficiently haul that stuff away, but these cities realize that they need data, and they need to store that data, and they need as much data as the private sector companies, like an Uber, like any potential disruptive entrant, if they want to understand their own city. And so we're seeing them pool their efforts together to create these new tools to manage the city. Air traffic control, basically, where you can route traffic through, talking to the mapping companies about injecting street closures and other things to efficiently route traffic. All this takes a level of insight that is maybe de rigueur in the private sector, but cities are just now making these kinds of investments in the tools and the storage and the tech that will allow them to really manage the city.
And please tell me they're also focused on securing that data that they're sharing with each other, because that is valuable information, and they've got that security first mindset.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that's come up actually in legal challenges. They've had to win lawsuits about this, about the privacy aspects of this. If you're going to have that level of data, that level of granularity, you have a responsibility to protect it. And so, yes, you're seeing the investments in hybrid cloud to make sure that the most valuable stuff, the most easily identifiable data stays on-prem, while you're able to manage stuff more efficiently with your partners in the cloud. And yeah, it's obviously a critical concern, particularly to Graham's point about cyber attacks, ransomware, the capability of this data to fall into the wrong hands. So it's a key concern that they're able to invest in that kind of cybersecurity. And we're also seeing, by the way, again, going back to AI for a moment, there's some really interesting efforts in observability and self-healing systems that I think a lot of what AI can help do is actually allow cities to much more efficiently invest in security, particularly given some of the talent shortage in cybersecurity fields.
We will talk about your past, but I want to focus on your present thought train now of the future. Like how I got all those in there, of what would a city that has invested in the right technologies, that is using all the data they get from us to really provide us with the right services efficiently, what does that look like to you in 5 years, in 10 years?
Yeah, in 5 to 10 years, ideally, it looks like a city where government officials are proactively thinking about what services they want to provision. It's a place where you can participate in public planning processes from your couch or out in the street. We're able to walk outside and be able to map to wherever it is you're going in your car or on foot, or to find local attractions. It's a place where it's easy to understand potentially where, which areas are safer than others there, where investments have been made in that. And yeah, it's a place basically where, you see a more muscular government, frankly, helping citizens plan out their future together. And so I know I like to think of it as one where, particularly where you can sit down and design the kind of city that you want to have. And these kinds of efforts in citizen engagement in particular, where instead of people versus government or wasting time with bureaucracies, fighting your way through forms and fields on screens, we now have the tools and the personas that'll help us here. Your friendly government AI, who ever imagined such a thing?
If we are interacting with more of that technology in the future, Is it your hope that, yes, we get to interact with that, but it frees up a little more time that you and me get to interact as human beings with each other as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I like to think, number one, like shortening time at the DMV, like that should be our number one goal with this tech. And like imagine that across scales, freeing up that time for us to spend time with our neighbors and with our families and not having to wade through that kind of bureaucracy, I think is going to be a great thing. And I think it's going to increase satisfaction, quality of life. It's going to allow cities to get people back into public spaces. It's going to get people back into downtowns, particularly for new uses, given what remote work and AI will do together. The big challenge facing cities about, now that we no longer have to go to cubicles and stare at flat screens all day, what happens there? I think that'll give cities the breathing room to rethink what they're for.
Two-time Jeopardy champion, undefeated against IBM Watson. Given where technology is now with AI, if Watson was powered by today's technologies, would you like your chances?
I would take my chances against a Watson, depending on how much he hallucinates. So let's see what kind of answers he throws out there. But I think in the long run, the importance of Watson, who sort of on the scrap heap of history at this point, post ChatGPT, but Watson was important because Watson was the first AI that was not scary. It was not the Terminator. It was not Deep Blue, which beat Kasparov. We were all worried about whether we were human anymore. It was friendly. It had a voice. It sort of had a personality. And I think that opens up a lot there about the way we think about AI as tools and companions and co-pilots and help. And that's really the cultural legacy of Watson. And just as a side there, when Kasparov lost playing chess, he didn't quit chess. He joined computers and started playing with computers against other computers. So how do we as humans work with AI to, I don't know, but defeat other AI, what games we'll play, but how we work together to achieve something that no AI by itself can achieve.
Your interest still in knowing facts, knowing the answers to things that help you win at Jeopardy. Is that still something that you focus on? And if so, how do you? Where do you go for your increasing kind of knowledge base of some of these things? I'm a fan. Sometimes my kids say, "Oh, Dad, you know a bunch of dumb stuff." And I'm like, "No, I'm not like you. I don't know what you know, but I know how some things work. I have some little tidbits from history that help explain, at least for me, where we are today." How are you in terms of still kind of gaining your own personal knowledge to understand how the world works?
Well, I mean, in addition to reading as many tabs as I possibly can, again, this is where I'm playing with a lot of AI tools, a lot of custom GPTs here to take, old data and analyze it. And I think, by the way, this is going to be an explosion in possibility. All the so-called dark data we have lying around, all the stuff that all the PDFs that I've collected over the years, all the books that I haven't read but have digital copies of, where we now have tools where you can ask for high-level summaries, granular summaries, combining data sets. We're going to see an explosion of creativity that just comes from asking better questions with better tools of the data we already have that's sitting out there. And again, it's going to contribute to a world where we're going to keep everything. We're going to remember everything. We're going to try to remember everything more than I or Watson could ever have, because there's so much value that we don't even know inside of that. I always come back to the, unknown unknowns, or even, the unknown knowns. What is it that we don't know that we know? That's what we need all the storage for. And that's true for city systems. That's true for exploring and learning new things, drug discovery, all the areas of endeavor that we're pushing into.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed what you heard from Greg there. We also thank Graham Fairbank for being on board from HPE. Look, you've already had a lot of things to think about on your data modernization journey. Maybe you have a couple more things now, and just want to remind you that the team at Sterling would love to hear from you and engage with you, continue that conversation. Couple things we can do: connect at sterling.com. Sterling.com as well for more information about all sorts of things, their services, as well as technologies like HPE Eletra. And finally, a phone number, 877-242-4074. With that, we're going to wrap things up. Really appreciate you being on board with us, and we do look forward to talking to you all down the road.